a half hour out of your life to learn some things about your health. How many of you have ever had blood work done before? Okay. That's really a dumb question. Pretty much everybody has. How many have you ever had blood work done and had not had it explained to you? Pretty much everybody. Okay. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, is it? Did you care?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, you cared. You want to know what those numbers mean, right? Okay. Is it common to have a physician sit down and explain blood work to you? It's not all that common. In fact, you know, I've had people tell me, yeah, I had, you know, my doctor took my blood work, took my blood. I never heard from him again. You know, so what I want to do tonight is just go through an explanation of what some of these tests mean, and I'm going to go through some uncommon tests that I do that are not necessarily. Come on in. Good to see you.
Thanks.
We're going to go through some tests that I do, but that aren't commonly done by other doctors. And these tests, I think, are really, really important. We got a set of notes for you.
Oh, that was great. Can I borrow a pen?
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I'll take it. Thanks.
So let's just look at the wellness panel. When your physician orders a blood panel, the blood panel usually has two parts. It's a general chemistry panel, and there's a complete blood count, which measures anemia and the immune system. Other tests, which we're going to talk about, allow for greater specificity, and those other tests, I believe, are super important if you're going to find out what's wrong with people, why they're sick. Okay, so let's look at normal and abnormal ranges. So the average, when you see the ranges on a blood test, what that basically represents is that represents the average person in this area of the country, what their blood work is. Now, if you look at the average person, are they sick or well?
Sick.
The average person is not well. They're walking around and they're not healthy at all. Does not represent health. Those numbers, what those numbers represent is average. And outside of those numbers, you can be clinically have problems. You may not have any problems. Some of those numbers can get really high before you ever have a symptom. Now, ideal ranges are much closer, and those are the ranges I use. And they show, how is your body working? Is it working well? Is it working properly? Values outside of those ranges indicate more abnormal function rather than clinical illness. Now, values outside of either range may or may not produce symptoms. It depends on the person. Now, here's another aspect of blood work I want you to understand. Blood work represents what is being transported in the body, not necessarily what's happening in the tissue. Okay? Blood work usually represents what's been happening in the body over a period of time. So what would be a test that you could do that would tell you what's happening in the tissue rather than what's being transported? Anybody have any ideas?
Blood gas?
No, blood gas is definitely what's being transported.
Okay, okay.
Hair mineral analysis?
Hair mineral analysis,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Hair analysis. That tells you what's happening in the tissue, okay? Now, let's start out with electrolytes, sodium, potassium, and chloride. These are critical to cardiac, neurological. Come on in. Yeah, come in. Get it? Here, yeah. So these are your electrolytes, okay? So
that one comfortable?
if you see somebody with a high sodium level, what is that? What do you usually think?
Too much salt.
Too much salt, okay? But low sodium, I think, is worse, okay? You show me somebody with a really low sodium, first of all, that can cause cardiac arrhythmia, but it shows me that their adrenal glands are really stressed, okay? Low sodium. Why? Anybody know why that is, how that would relate to adrenal function? What organ in the body regulates sodium, potassium, and chloride? Who knows?
Kidneys.
Kidneys. Good job. Kidneys. Yes. What organ sits on top of the kidneys?
The adrenal glands.
The adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands influence the kidneys. So if the adrenal glands are not working right, these three things can be off. Okay? So what happens if potassium gets too low? Anybody? Your heart stops and you die.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and if you have low potassium, can you eat enough bananas to get it up?
No.
There's no way you're ever going to eat enough bananas to get it up. You need potassium, okay? So, usually sodium, potassium, and chloride, when I look at these, unless they're way off, I'm looking at what's going on with the adrenal glands, okay? And you show me somebody with a low sodium, really low sodium, they probably got severe adrenal depletion. Now, potassium, again, elevated potassium, low adrenal function, dehydration, tissue destruction, low potassium, adrenal hyperfunction, diuretics, fatigued heart muscle, diets high in refined carbohydrates. So one of the things I find that causes more kidney problems than anything else is, what do you think it is?
The diet. No.
No. Jason, you usually get them right, but you didn't get that one right. Okay, pharmaceuticals. You look at most people that have that are on kidney dialysis. A lot of those people are that way because of pharmaceuticals they've taken. Pharmaceuticals really mess with kidneys. So that's something to look at when you're looking at potassium. Depends on what the other findings are and what their history is. Blood urea nitrogen and creatinine. Elevated BUN usually indicates kidneys are not filtering the urine out properly, and blood urea nitrogen is accumulating in the blood. However, it could actually mean you're dehydrated. So dehydration could cause that. It could low BUN, lack of pituitary function, or depending on what else you find, lack of protein in the diet. So, by the way, did you guys?
They did not.
No, they haven't.
There you go.
Do you need a pen? I got an extra one if you need one.
Now, creatinine in a male, elevated creatinine in a male usually indicates one of two things. Number one, they just had a very vigorous workout the night before, they have muscle breakdown, or they have prostate or urinary tract dysfunction. Let's look at protein. Now, on a blood test, you're going to see protein, albumin, and globulin, or you'll see just protein and albumin, okay? So if you subtract the albumin from the protein, that'll give you the globulin, okay? Globulin plus albumin equals protein.
Okay.
So what happens is total protein represents how well your body is breaking down the food you eat. So a low protein, what would that might indicate? Anybody?
Your body's not digesting.
Yes. Body's not digesting food very well. And why would that be?
Low stomach acid?
Low stomach acid, yeah. And what causes low stomach acid?
Some pharmaceuticals can do it.
Pharmaceuticals, proton pump inhibitors, okay?
Prilosec.
What, Prilosec? Yeah, okay. What else? How about low zinc?
Yeah.
Okay, and here's the last one. Just getting older. As we get older, our stomachs don't produce as much acid. Okay, so sometimes we need some help. That's where I have supplements to help that. So a dropping or low albumin usually represents a poor state of health or developing disease. There's a ratio called the albumin globulin ratio, which you see on blood tests, okay? Let me see if I've got a slide on that. Right here, yeah. An elevated albumin, come in. Hey, Terry.
I'm trying, Paul.
An elevated albumin globulin ratio is usually a sign of dehydration or immune dysfunction. So, how would you know if it was, how would you be able to tell the two apart? That's a hard question, but based on what I just told you, you might be able to get it. What if the BUN is high?
Yeah.
Then you're probably looking at dehydration. Normal BUN, the elevated albumin globulin ratio, immune problem, okay? What about low AG ratio? The AG ratio should be about 1.5. Now, I don't expect you guys to remember that, okay? But on a really sick person, you'll see it below 1, like 0.8, 0.7. A couple of years ago, my mom got really sick, and we still don't know why she got sick. But, you know, I saw her blood work, and her AG ratio was 0.5, and I thought,
yikes.
I don't know if she's going to make it or not. And she did. She's okay now. You know, she's doing really well. But a chronic low AG ratio, something that's below 1, indicates that there's something going on with that person's body that's not good, okay? And you want to try and, I always try and get that back up, okay? So what about glucose and A1C? How many know what A1C is, what it measures? Yeah, I mean, if you ever had like type 2 diabetes, you know that A1C is basically what you're looking at,
Yeah.
okay?
Yep.
So A1C represents your average blood sugar over a 3 to 4 month period of time. Anybody else know what else A1C represents? There's another word for A1C called glycolated hemoglobin. Okay? Does anybody know what glycolated hemoglobin does to the body? Not good. Okay? Glycolated hemoglobin is when sugar and protein hook onto each other. And what happens is that ages the body significantly. So the higher your A1C goes, the faster your tissues are going to age. See, that's why you want an A1C in a normal range if you can help it, okay? And a high A1C, almost always a lifestyle issue. It's what are you eating? You know, what's your diet like? How much are you exercising? That's what it means, okay? Almost always, okay? Now, how about insulin? This is one of my favorite blood tests of all time, okay? And insulin, if I can just look at that one test, that tells me more about that person's lifestyle than just about any tests I know. Because elevated insulin levels are linked to diabetes, cancer, obesity. And why do insulin levels go high? Anybody know?
Too much sugar?
Not sure.
Yeah, Terry?
Yeah, it's because your insulin is not working to reduce the amount of blood sugar in your blood, and it builds up too much.
That's right. So it's because your diet. High, unless you're a type 1 diabetic and you're shooting yourself with insulin, then all bets are off on that. Okay? But if you're not a type 1 diabetic and you're not taking insulin, and your insulin levels are just going up and up and up, that's a lifestyle issue. And I'll tell you this, and I'll go over this when I do my nutrition and cancer seminar, which is September 27th. That fasting insulin is is a pretty significant predictor. It can be a predictor of cancer. In other words, sugar feeds cancer, and the higher the insulin levels, the greater your chances are of getting cancer. You want insulin levels below 5, okay? Every test I do, every blood test I do in this office, every comprehensive blood test includes serum insulin, because that's such an important test. Now, there's some other tests I'll show you that relate to cancer as well. Calcium phosphorus, okay? Calcium is a good test. Low calcium can either indicate not getting enough calcium or your body's not metabolizing your food very well. Low calcium can indicate low stomach acid, because your body needs stomach acid in order to absorb minerals. So now phosphorus is a test. I used to do it a lot. I don't do it as much anymore. But a low phosphorus, regardless of calcium levels, indicates that your body is not absorbing or utilizing calcium. Phosphorus reflects vitamin D levels. So if the calcium is too high, that indicates bone disease. Now, why would that be?
Because the cancer is using up the calcium.
It's if you have some disease that's dissolving bone, that calcium is going to end up in your blood. Yeah. Okay. And so you don't want calcium that's too high. And by the way, you only want high calcium is not necessarily that good for you, especially if it's coming from supplements you're taking. There's only one calcium supplement that I recommend, really, maybe two, but the number one is calcium lactate, which I carry here. It's the most ionizable form of calcium there is. Your body actually uses calcium to destroy bacteria and viruses. The white blood cells do. But you don't want calcium too high, because when you take things like calcium carbonate, oyster shell calcium, things like that, your body can't metabolize that. So where does that end up?
Going out.
That's true. Yeah.
Excreted.
No, it doesn't excrete it. It stores it in your kidneys and your heart valves and everywhere else that it shouldn't be. Okay? So that's where a lot of the calcium in the pasteurized dairy products ends up too. That's why I don't drink milk and I don't drink pasteurized dairy. So calcium, pretty valuable marker. I look at it. Magnesium, another one. Now, magnesium is really, really important mineral in the body. Deficiencies in magnesium can lead to heart problems, high blood pressure, lots of other symptoms. Here's the thing about magnesium. I'm just gonna tell you the truth on this. The serum magnesium that I use on a blood test is not the most accurate form of magnesium. The most accurate form of magnesium on a blood test is called whole blood magnesium. Now, who knows why I don't use whole blood magnesium? Anybody?
Price.
Price.
Yeah.
It drives up the cost of the blood test. So the serum magnesium that I use, it's okay. I don't pay that much attention to it. Whole blood magnesium is way better. So I just it gives me a little bit of an estimate of what's going on, but magnesium is really important. And the fact is, if you're getting cramps at night in your legs or anytime, you probably have a magnesium deficiency, and you don't need a blood test to be able to tell that. So you have cholesterol and triglycerides. Okay, cholesterol has been what? Been the boogeyman in our culture for so long. The pharmaceutical companies have made billions and billions of dollars off of misinforming people about cholesterol. Okay? So I'm just going to say this about cholesterol and triglycerides. Primarily, it is an indicator of your diet. Okay? Primarily. Not always, but primarily. Okay? So if your diet, if you're eating a standard American diet and you're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of processed food, a lot of processed fat, it's going to elevate you're going to elevate your lipids. Okay? Period. And you can control that just with your diet. You don't need drugs. You can control it with your diet. Now, what I get more concerned about, way more concerned about than high cholesterol, is cholesterol that's too low. Way more concerned. Why would that be? If you've been to lots of my talks, you would know.
Neuropathy or cholesterol's is involved in brain function.
That's a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
You know, if I were generous, I'd give you a bar for that.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
It's not one of those nights.
Okay.
Tonight.
That's okay.
Okay. 12% of your brain is cholesterol. So you lower cholesterol, you lower your brain function. Okay. What else do you lower with? What else happens when your cholesterol gets too low? Anybody?
Lower your hormones.
Yeah, all your sex hormones are made out of cholesterol. So you want to lower your testosterone? Lower cholesterol. Okay? You want to lower estrogen and progesterone? Lower cholesterol. Okay? What else is made from cholesterol? Vitamin D. What else? Bile salts are made from cholesterol. So you want to screw up your gallbladder, lower your cholesterol. Okay? Lower it really good. Okay? And you want to have hormones, you want to have vitamin D, your brain's not going to work right. Okay? I get way more concerned about low cholesterol than I do about high cholesterol. Okay? So, and by the way, if somebody comes in and they have really low cholesterol and they're not on cholesterol medication, I don't tell them, hey, go out and eat a lot of sugar. Okay, that's not my cure for low cholesterol. We find out what they're eating, we try and work with their diet and try and fix some of the other things that are out of balance here to get that cholesterol back up. Usually, where's cholesterol made, by the way? Where in the body is it made? Anybody? Your body makes it all the time.
In the liver?
Yeah, it's the liver. Your liver's a cholesterol factory. So if your cholesterol's too low, probably a liver issue. So your liver's not working right. Okay. Now, here's an important fact. The LDL, low-density lipoprotein, should be within 100 points of the total cholesterol. Okay. If so, then no concern. They're within 100 points of each other. However, if they're not, you know, if the LDL is too much over 100 points from the total cholesterol, that's when LDL is a concern. Now, that doesn't mean you go out and you get on a statin. That means you change your diet and get your liver working right. Okay, let's look at liver enzymes. ALK-Phos, SGOT, SGPT, GGT. Depending on whether high or low, or in certain combinations, they can indicate liver toxicity, fatty liver congestion, pancreatitis, B6, zinc, or magnesium deficiency, bone calcium disorder, or cellular destruction. Okay, just depending on whether they're high or low and in what combinations they're in. Okay, a high alkaline phos is not, I consider that a pretty significant finding because that can be liver or bone. Okay, so, let's see, what's my next one? Okay, elevated alkaline phos will be either liver toxicity or bone destruction. How would I know if it's bone destruction? We just talked a little bit about it.
Calcium would be raised.
Calcium go up, yeah. Really, if you have a high ALK phos and a high calcium, you know, it's really high, I'd probably maybe send that person out to a medical doctor and say, maybe you should get checked out. Okay. Low ALK phos, zinc deficiency, period. And I see that all the time. Low ALK phos, low zinc. Okay, GGT. This is a liver enzyme. I'm just going to go over this really quick. This is like the poor man's way of measuring glutathione. Glutathione is one of the most important detoxifiers and antioxidants in your body. It's very powerful. The GGT should be right around 15. The higher above 15 it is, the less glutathione you have in your body. So when GGT goes up, I give people a supplement called NAC, which I take myself, by the way. Have it up on my desktop right now. So NAC elevates glutathione, lowers GGT. Really good for the liver. Good for, it's also a good product for COVID. Now let's look at LDH. LDH is a good measure. I would call it a poor man's measure of mitochondrial function. Okay, so LDH, lactate dehydrogenase, when LDH starts going up and up and up, I'm going to tell you, this is just a preview of what I'm going to talk about with cancer and nutrition. High LDH means your body's starting to ferment sugar for energy, and that's what cancer cells do. Okay, so when I see an elevated LDH, I try and feed the mitochondria, which are the energy producers of the cell, to bring that down so the body can make energy normally, okay? So high LDH, when it's really high, it can be cardiovascular disease. You have a heart attack that shoots LDH to the ceiling. It can be tissue inflammation and destruction. If the person doesn't have cardiovascular disease, I assume this is what's going on, and I try and get that LDH down. Homocysteine. Anybody hear this before? Homocysteine? Okay, good. Some of you have heard about it. The test I do a lot, okay? So I'll just go over it real quick. Elevated homocysteine, what that does when that's high is it means that your arteries, the lining of your arteries are starting to get inflamed and sticky. Okay? So what does that mean? What does that attract?
Clots?
Yeah, clots. It actually attracts cholesterol. Cholesterol's not the bad guy.
Fat?
Yeah, it's just sticking on to a surface. It's sticky. Okay? So high homocysteine is a deficiency of B6, B12, and folic acid. This has got to be lowered. You know, lots of people have high homocysteine. The way you lower it, I give Cataplex B Core or Beta Food for that. Those are the two products I have that will lower homocysteine. Okay? TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. How many of you have ever had a test, a doctor do this test on them and tell them something about their thyroid based on this test? Anybody? Okay. A really common test. I'm going to tell you something. It's almost worthless. Okay. TSH is almost a worthless test for thyroid. TSH is produced in the pituitary gland, and it stimulates the thyroid to produce T4. So, does not tell you how well the thyroid gland is working. In fact, TSH is part of my blood panel, but it is not, I do not pay any attention to it in terms of thyroid function unless it's high. If it's really high, then the thyroid probably isn't working. But I tell you something, and I tell you this, I could pull patients' files out of there right now. I've had so many people come in with a normal TSH, where I've done a thyroid profile on them. They've got Hashimoto's thyroiditis. They got Hashimoto's disease, and the TSH is normal. This is worthless for telling about how well the thyroid is working. You have to do more tests. I'm not going to talk about that because I do an entire talk on thyroid function. You got to come to that talk. So thyroid stimulating hormone does not tell you all that much about the thyroid. How about iron and anemia? Okay. If you're going to look at anemia, you have to do several tests. You have to do ferritin and iron. Okay, ferritin's a very sensitive test for anemia. And an iron test for anemia is a little bit like testing TSH for thyroid. It's not worth much. If I suspect somebody has anemia, I do a ferritin. Ferritin is a very sensitive test for, it's an iron storage protein. So if you want, and so I do a ferritin and I do iron and I do a couple of other tests. That will tell me whether somebody's anemic or not. Because what I've seen is high ferritin, low iron. Okay, that usually means a liver issue, not anemia. So somebody with high ferritin and really high ferritin and really low iron, and you give them you supplement them too much, they're not going to feel very good. Okay, someone's got low ferritin, that I give them a supplement called ferritin. That will bring that ferritin up. But I do not base anemia on an iron test alone. Okay, let's look at red blood cell hemoglobin and hematocrit. These values represent how well your body is utilizing and absorbing, metabolizing iron. They're really low, that can mean anemia. But again, I would look at ferritin and iron. High values, too much iron in the body. Low transferrin. Transferrin are the trucks that transport iron around the body. Made in the liver, so that means liver dysfunction. Transferrin is a pretty common test on this. MCV, these are the M's, MCV, MCH, MCHC. Low values a lot of times indicate anemia. Again, I always check with ferritin and iron on that. High values, when these values are high, it's usually B12 and folate deficiency. So what about neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, white blood cell count? This is your immune system, okay? This tells me what's going on with immunity. So low neutrophils, elevated lymphocytes, could be food intolerances or chronic viral infection. I won't get into the minutia of this. Just remember that these values here is your immune system. And based on what I see there, I can tell you, I can tell a lot about your immune system. If you have elevated eosinophils and monocytes, and you've been out of the country especially, or you live on a farm, or you have lots of pets, very good chance you got parasites, okay? Good chance. Elevated eosinophils by themselves may indicate food or environmental allergy. Basophils, when they're elevated, allergy, toxicity, or infection. And I can just look at the rest of the blood panel and usually determine which one of that is. How about vitamin D? Another great test that I do. Everybody that gets a comprehensive blood test from me gets a vitamin D. Very powerful for the immune system. You need it for mood stabilization. You need it for absorbing calcium. Vitamin D is a very good test. When it's low, when we were right in the center, right in the middle of COVID, I can show you at least 5 papers in my office that show that vitamin D is inversely correlated with how bad people got COVID or whether they ended up in the hospital. So the lower vitamin D, the worse the COVID, okay? There's at least 5 papers in my office that show that. High sensitive C-reactive protein, inflammation, period, and inflammation of the coronary arteries. So another great test. What other test in here that you saw, this is a hard question, would tell me that there's a couple of other tests, tell me there's a lot of inflammation in the body? Anybody?
Sedimentary something.
Sed rate?
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't in here.
Okay.
But you're right.
Okay.
That's a good answer. Jason.
Okay.
Very good answer. Yeah, sed rate would. I don't use sed rate. I use HSCRP.
Okay.
Elevated insulin, high inflammation. Okay. Definitely elevated insulin is high levels of inflammation. Elevated ferritin, when ferritin is really high, that's an inflammatory process. That's inflammation in the body. So those two tests, when they're high, you know the body's inflamed. Okay, so that's probably enough for tonight. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, does anybody have any questions on blood work? Nobody. It's clear as mud, right?
I'll have one.
Okay.
What's normal for A1C? What should you have?
Should be less than 5.5.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Should be less than 5.5. When A1C is 6, you're pre-diabetic. You know, when it's above 6.5, then, you know, you're starting.
Watch out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not good. Okay. Should be less. Should be less than 5.5 or less.
6.5 or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 point. Yes.
Can you order some blood work for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm ready.
Talk to the boss lady right
Okay.
there. So,
What are the prices? Like, have they the specifics? Like, is there a low? Then test everything for so much, or
what is our comprehensive blood panel right now? How much is it?
$375.
$375. Okay. I just dropped that price, by the way. I dropped it $100.
okay.
So, and then we can do some specific tests. Like, I would recommend that maybe we add on like homocysteine to that. That's a good marker. We could probably add that on for $25 or something like that.
So how often should you have the comprehensive blood panel done?
Yearly,
Yearly.
once a year. Yeah, once a
Okay,
year.
Darlene, yearly.
I-
She's asking.
On the relation with hemoglobin A1C, if you have someone that is diabetic or pre-diabetic, do you still use the fasting glucose test?
Yeah, I use fasting glucose. Sometimes fasting glucose is normal and A1C is high.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that means?
They were good that week?
Okay, yeah, or they're heading in a good direction. Yeah, yeah.
Means
That's a good
their
answer.
insulin was not working, or they weren't given enough insulin to lower their blood sugar.
Yeah, well, I have to
Their
look
blood
at
sugar was too high.
I have to look at the insulin levels too. So
Yeah.
you have to look at all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I would, if you're going to get a comprehensive blood panel, I would consider adding on the homocysteine because it's such a great test. And nothing else tests what that one does that I know. So yeah, yeah, you just talk to Carmen. We can schedule you for the test, and we can do it. Takes about how long does it take? 6 days to get it back? 5 days?
To get everything back, yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty fast. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you very much. The next test or the next talk we're going to do is how chiropractic benefits children. So we're going to talk about kids' health, and if you know people that have kids that those kids are sick a lot, they should be at the talk. Okay, because we're going to talk about that, about chiropractic kids and health. And then the one right after that is on Alzheimer's and dementia, what the current science is on that. So thank you for coming tonight. I kept you over just a little longer. Hope that the notes will help refresh your memory, and in case you, I went through some of this stuff pretty fast, but some of it's pretty detailed. I didn't want to bore people. So good. Thank you very much.